Hey, this is Christian from Cryptopsy, and you're watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 277 of RichardMetalFan interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Christian Donaldson from the almighty Cryptopsy and Mythosis. So, how are you doing today, Christian?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. We had a good night of sleep, so I feel excellent.
It's awesome. So, it's so great to have you here. So, kind of like the format of the show is I want to talk about like your musical history and sort of do a rundown of your discography, but take it back to young Christian Donaldson. So, kind of growing up in Montreal, Canada, what were the first bands that got you into metal and what made you want to start playing guitar?
I think it's my story is very boring. About that, there's like probably like 99% of people I started listening to Metallica, and I thought it was I didn't understand what was happening, so it made me pick up the guitar. So I wanted to play like the Metallica song, and I was obsessed by that band. So and after that, later on, there's Pantera, which I still think is an excellent band. Uh, but it was just like growing up listening to like mainly those two bands, and after that, so on, Sepultura, and just like, kept on going heavier and heavier. But the young Christian Donaldson was really a big fan of like the first four albums of Metallica.
That's pretty much like the majority. Some Metallica fans, they like first four, and that's it.
I don't dislike the Black Album. I think the production is excellent and the songs are very catchy. But I mean,
Yeah,
if it, I
I feel
mean,
like
I
it's just
guess
been
from
overhyped for the
yeah,
most
yeah,
part.
probably
Like Enter Sandman, you hear it like everywhere.
everywhere. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I still love some of those. Some songs on there is actually pretty good. I also one of my favorite songs is like "My Friend of Misery."
Yeah, yeah. I was a big fan of Wherever I May Roam. Like I thought it was one of my favorite songs on the album back then.
Oh yeah. So I was like doing my research. I guess like your first band was called Minds. Like I'm digging deep. Like I don't think nobody's ever talked about this.
I don't think so. It's funny. It's we had fun. We almost got signed to Roadrunner actually.
Uh,
Uh, we went to play a couple shows in the States, and like some people were interested in Roadrunner. Same thing with Mitosis. But no, it's you going deep, you're going far, man.
oh yeah,
That's good.
like you could thank Metal Archives for a lot for pretty much putting submitting all that shit.
Yeah, yeah. That was fun, man. It was my we know high school band with your best friends. You know how it is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and tell me about like that first EP, which is called Blurred Vision of Hope. Like I'm kind of curious because I was trying to like look online to see if it was like floating online. I can't really find it anywhere. So do you know where I could like listen to it?
That's a great question. I don't know. I might have. I'm not even. I moved after because maybe one of my friends still has a copy of the CD somewhere. That's probably it. I should try to upload it somewhere.
Oh yeah. And then I know
But
going into 2001, you did the last release, Encoded. Tell me about that. You also got signed to Disgeeks MVP, which I believe was another like little local label. So was that like just like to distribute the album?
it was actually a pretty big label where I was from. They signed. I don't know if you know Oblivion, that
Right?
band from Quebec. But Oblivion was on that. Later on, they signed the band called Anonymous from Montreal as well. Uh, but they were big, but locally, it's like. But that was fun. We recorded a like this gorgeous studio in like in Quebec, like by the lake, and it was we were one of the first band to record that at place. It was fantastic. I think I was 20 back then, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh wow. And then I guess kind of going forward is Mythosis, which this year does mark 20 years since the formation of the band. So do you think that Mythosis would be around for 20 years?
Jesus, right, 20 years to make me look old, man.
I was 10 when y'all formed.
Crazy. But that was just like the continuity of Minds, basically, like still the same like core, my best friend on drums, and we just like get a better singer. And let's say I was involved more of the writing process, more and more. But that band was special because I remember Monty Connor came to see us in Montreal because he really was interested, and so that was a big thing like, for me. I had
Yeah.
high hopes of that band, but sadly it didn't work out. So
Yeah, because I because I did listen to one of that one album, Counterfeit Illusions, which I thought that was a good album.
It's old stuff too. I mean,
Oh
like,
yeah,
it's really old stuff. I was a big fan of the EP we did after.
Mind Built
Fuck was
Prison.
it? Yeah, that was. I think like this is where we became more what we were trying to do, like with more industrial slash strapping young lad slash Gojira esque, but Gojira was not really big back then, so but it was a bit in that stuff. So maybe like I don't know, Chimera on crack or something like that, maybe.
Nice. Is there even plans to do more Mythosis or nah?
Yes and no. I mean, like I was trying to, I tried to hook up with the drummer like last Christmas time, and we tried to because there's like a couple songs we never released, so we try to re-record it. But I mean, timing wise, these days it's very complicated. We all have lives now and everything, and and we're busy with other projects, so it's not easy to go into it. But I'm not opposed to relaunching something at some point because there's some pretty good songs.
Yeah. And I know kind of like backtracking because going into 2005, you ended up joining Cryptopsy. So how did you end up joining the band?
That was funny. Um, there used to be a guitar contest in Montreal. Well, I just went to that contest and I just try to, basically I try to be the best. And there was like this one time where I was against an opponent, and the guitar player from Cryptopsy back then was one of the judges. So I'm starting to do that contest, and I obviously think I'm better than the other guy, and he made me lose basically. And after that, I was super bummed out. I was like, "What the hell did I lose against this guy? I don't understand." And then next day, I received a phone call at my job from him. He told me, "Sorry if I made you lose, because if you would have win, you would have to go to Toronto, and we need you to come on tour with us for Suffocation." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, so it's funny because I started to be, I was very bummed out, and then the next day I got very excited by this opportunity. So,
Yeah. And were you like a fan of the band before then? Were you like listening to like None So Vile
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
Blasphemy
yeah.
Made Flesh
I,
and shit?
I was a big fan of those two records. My favorite was First Supremacy, but None So Vile, I listened to it like millions of times.
Oh
So yeah,
yeah.
I was a big fan.
Yeah. So then tell me about making like your first record with the band, The Unspoken King. Really interesting
Oh,
album.
maybe we should talk about this one. I'm not a
Yeah.
big fan actually. I was probably the only one who was really, really opposed by this thing. But I mean, I believe the band was in a weird place back then. Maybe identity crisis. So I don't know what's going on with this, but and since I was just new in the band, I didn't have much say in the writing process. So I was just like going along with their ideas, even though if I some of them was not really happy about it. I basically wrote two songs entirely on this record. It was "Worship Your Demons" and what's that other song there?
Yeah.
Anoint the Dead. Yeah, Anoint
Yeah.
the Dead. That's the one.
Which I think are pretty good songs. Like I know like this album gets shit on because you were trying to like go for like the deathcore sound, which I know a lot of people have like some of those deathcore bands are even of course fellow Montrealers Despised Icon like would cite like Cryptopsy as like an influence.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, Whisper Supremacy is death metal with hardcore vocals, so it could be considered as deathcore in a sense, but it was way more extreme. I don't know. I mean, I'm just really happy that now this is behind us because I was as the main writer now. I'm really not a fan, and I would this is not where I wanted the band to be.
All right. All right. And then kind of going into the next album, which was the self-titled, I thought this was a great like a return to form because and usually when a band does like a self-titled, it's almost uh, is always like the first album. But when I see it like in like the middle of like their career, I always feel like it's like a change or a new era. Was that sort of like the reason why the album was self-titled?
I don't know. I can't remember actually. I know John came back, which was amazing. Amazing for me. Really helped me rethink and re-understand the band, because I really was able to understand his vision of what Cryptopsy should be. and he retaught me all the riffs the perfect way. So I mean, that was amazing for that. But I don't even know why it was, because I think according to him, that would have been the last Cryptopsy album. So I think because of that, that's why he wanted to call it self-titled or just Cryptopsy.
Yeah, and I feel like if it would have been, and I feel like it would have been an awesome way to end like the run of Cryptopsy if that were to happen.
Yeah, it could have been good, but I guess we had other things to say.
Yeah, and of course, you also first album with Ollie Pinard on the
Yeah,
bass. So
yeah.
how did he end up joining?
What was he playing in? He was playing in Neuraxis before, and I went to see him. I went to see a concert for one of my friends' band called Vengeful, and he was playing with them, and I was like, damn man, that bass player is really kicking ass, man. And so I just went to see him straight after the concert, and I was like, we were looking for a bass player anyways. So I was like, would you be interested? And he obviously said yes, and since then it's amazing.
Awesome. And then I know you also do like some session work because in 2013 you actually played bass on this album, Rimpa, with Rain Through Immortality. I love this album and very underrated too. Like nobody ever talks about this band or this album in particular.
Great band. I mean, I think we're looking for a bass player, or they didn't have any, so I was like, it's fine. I'll do it myself. I do this sometimes when it's needed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love this. This album is good. Like I remember hearing about this band about 10 years ago, and they definitely remind me a lot of like Dimmu Borgir.
Yeah, yeah. The vibe is excellent. I mean, the vibe is great. I mean, it's dark, it's heavy. I like it. The guys are awesome dudes too. So
Oh yeah. And then kind of going back in the cryptopsy, because I know in 2015 you dropped the Book of Suffering EP, P2 1. I love this little EP. What was sort of like the idea to make like the I guess the part one and part two?
technically it was supposed to be three parts, so maybe we'll do the third one at some point. I don't know. I think we just wanted to write stuff, material, but we were just for some reason like really caught on our life, so we were not able to write as many songs as we wanted. So we just wrote like when we were able to manage to do four songs, we just thought to ourselves like, why don't we just release those four songs in a in an EP form? And it's actually I'm very happy too. And also I think we worked with Jason Sukoff on the record that he mixed, and that was amazing for me. And it was a great experience. I love the guy, and it was fun to fly to Florida to mix an album with him.
Yeah. And
But
then you're saying,
but I think the reason why we made this is because we were maybe too slow on the writing or something.
and then Tomb 2, I thought this was a great sequel to Tomb 1. So how'd this come to be? Because I know there was like the 3 year gap because this came out in 2018. Last one was 2015.
I was the same thing basically. We had like a couple of songs, but not enough to make an album. So we just decided to release something because we were, and we were independent back then. So we just thought like we need to put something out just to be able to tour. So that's since we didn't have enough songs, we just at least released those EPs. But yeah, yeah. But that was a fun experience. And also, I
Yeah.
think it was more of it was the first time where we kind of discovered or rediscovered how to work together as that, like that current my current lineup. So it was also a learning process, like to be able to know like how we're going to work together now. So that was maybe like the beginning of like understanding how to work together. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Cryptopsy has pretty much had this sort of the same work tour guys since 2012 with like you and Matt and Flo and Ollie. So what keeps you guys still like going together now after almost like going on 12 years?
Oh, I don't know, man. I think we all have we understand our space, or we understand what we bring to the band, and we just focus on bringing to make it happen. Uh, but I mean, and also like we're all friends, so that helps a lot. So we're not just like business partners. We're talking about this. Uh, I mean, we're all buddies, and So that helps a lot, man. So if there's anything that's not going well, we can always like call each other and say like, "Hey, what's going on?" Man? We can just fix it. And as opposed as before, where it was more of a working relationship, now it's more like a friendship too, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Y'all ever get into like fights and stuff?
Oh, everybody fights sometimes, but we just know our limits and we know when to give someone space. And we grew up, we're older now. It's not when you're a teenager and you're full of ego and you want to prove something. No, we're adults and we all have
Awesome.
kids and we just understand what's up.
Totally. And then, of course, your latest album as Gomorrah Burns. This was definitely one of my favorite albums from last year, and it's still kicking ass. So, how has like the whole like reception been like for the album now? Pretty much getting close to 1 year.
Very happy about this album. Very, very, very happy. We worked hard, and it was. We also got signed to Nuclear Blast, and since there was something that I wanted, I was a bit fed up of being independent because I kind of wanted to have a bit more reach, and so that was something for me. Like I really have to make the best record possible for at that time,
Yeah.
and I think we succeeded so far. So it's just not right now. I have a lot of pressure because I want to write the best record now. But that's it's not easy. Also, we're riding on the road right now, so that's another challenge.
Yeah. And it has been being a has been like a decade plus since like the last Cryptopsy album. Did you want to just like pick up after the Sultana? I know you had like the two EPs in between. Did you want to like pick up after that, or being as it has been like over a decade, did you want to try try like something new or make it like a fresh new start for Cryptopsy in a way?
It's always tricky when you write music. I find that you always have like certain intention to do something, and and riffs comes to you like, okay, that's not at all what I want to do, but it's very good. It's like I feel like at some point it's a bit weird, but I feel like you are an antenna, and the ideas comes to you, and you just have to grab them, and after that, your mind will filter or lets you, so tells you what is good or what is not, or what is cryptopsy and what is not cryptopsy. But sometimes, like as much as you want to have intention, the riff will bring you somewhere themselves.
Yeah. And then what would you say like the overall like inspiration behind the album would be?
I mean, music wise, because I know Matt has a very specific thing about his lyrics, which is like social media and kind of make it parallel with the Sodom and Gomorrah biblical theme. But music wise is just trying to go back to the roots and but adding some darker elements.
Yeah. And how do you feel like to be back now and what were some of like the challenges you faced during the making of As Gomorrah Burns?
The pandemic was a big one. That was very complicated. So we had to kind of write over Zoom, and that was a bit of a disaster. So, uh,
And,
so
yeah, because like I know during the pandemic, I know it really kind of like fucked up the whole like music industry and whatnot. Not that that overall sort of like influenced the sound of the album in a way.
yeah, actually, yes. Now it's funny that you mentioned this because I totally forgot. No, when we started writing process, we rented a cabin in the wood, so we were just all there. And the day we arrived at at this cabin and start like writing, the whole world shuts down. It's like that day that the pandemic started, and we no, it was just all shut. So we were like just like very confused and almost scared, and like, are we stuck in this cabin forever? What's going on? What's happening? So I guess you can maybe feel that weird like confusion and maybe like you don't know, like fear also that we felt through like that writing process. It was very
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah, and I love it. Definitely fits with like the album artwork, which is done by Paulo Girardi. I feel like it pretty much complements sort of like I guess the darker kind of like themes on the album. And sort of like what was sort of like the concept behind the cover, and how do you feel like it sort of like relates to the music?
And we wanted to have something uh old school, but that and also like everybody has their own opinion about like digital art and AI and stuff. We really wanted to go the total opposite. We needed a painting, like a very painting to keep that weird. old vibe, like non-Sauval-esque of Renaissance almost. I find it's a
Yeah,
bit more. I don't want to say scary, but it just takes you more to the
yeah,
uh, you know what I mean.
yeah. And of course, like Cryptopsy has been around for a little over 30 years, and they pretty much remain like a dominant force in death metal. How do you sort of like keep like the sound like fresh and relevant while staying true to sort of like the signature Cryptopsy style?
It's as I said, it's hard to say, man. I really just every time I write some riffs, I'm like, it's sometimes it just comes to you and you really feel like, okay, this is really good. I need to keep that. And then after that you just go from there and it becomes some kind of it becomes a musical piece, but you never really I feel I never plan these things. I just really like, play and everything that just catch my attention, I just put it in a song.
Yeah. And of course, as Gomorrah Burns has like that great mix of like intense brutality and savage grooves. So how do you like sort of like find the balance with these elements within like the songwriting and the arrangements?
It's a good. I feel like the best thing is like I'm we're not listening to metal much ourselves. So I feel like that pretty brings you other perspective on how to write music, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
sometimes I can just like, I heard some kind of thing in the folk music, and I'm like, oh, I really like this arrangements, and maybe you can just bring it in metal, and it just makes it very, very interesting.
Yeah. And talking about like your live show, because you played like all over the world, like how do you sort of like approach like translating like this like how you what you do on the CD to like the live stage, and what can fans expect from like live performances? Because I last saw you all on the Maryland Death Fest, and that was great, great. So what kind of is there like any sort of like energy like playing live versus then like recording on an album?
But honestly, I try to be as say as accurate as possible. So I mean, like sometimes there's like some parts on the album where there's like 8 guitars. I'm talking about Gomorrah Burns, but I'm trying to sample those 8 guitars to make sure that it's going to be as close to the recording as possible. And I'm always been a big fan of just not being disappointed. It's just I've always been a big fan of like when I go see a band live, I want to hear not the album, but as close to because if there's some parts that are missing, I'm like, oh fuck, I wish I could hear that guitar harmony here or that sample. And I think it's for me, it's important to have all these little details.
Absolutely. And of course, like this is the first album on Nuclear Blast, like you talked about it earlier. So, well, how is like the overall like relationship between like Cryptopsy and Nuclear Blast Records?
Maybe I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that. Maybe I'll talk to you about it off air, but there's some little surprises about labels going or it's going to happen.
Yeah. And of course, talking about like because like your all's albums, I also love like you have like the great vinyls. So how important is like the physical format in presenting like music to the audience, and what role does like vinyl play in the overall sort of like hear listening experience?
Uh, I'm a sound engineer myself, so I know like I can I know that vinyls are technically not as good quality wise and sound wise because you have to do some little things that you don't have to do when you're listening to digital. For example, you have to low pass, so you have to high pass the bass at somewhere around 60 to 100 hertz, and you have to, so it makes it a little less accurate. But I think the experience of just waiting and just and listening and just really appreciate the record on its own is what makes it special, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and in terms of like, because you mentioned like you do like audio engineering and all that stuff and mixing and stuff. So is there like differences between like working with like other bands versus like with your own music?
Not much. I just feel maybe it's a little less intense because when you just started, when you wrote everything and then you record everything and you mix everything, you just get fed up and maybe you have a little less objectivity, I believe. So that is maybe an issue, but yeah, I feel like when I'm mixing my own band, I feel like I'm listening to everybody in everybody's opinion, which in the end makes it that I'm not listening to my opinion. So maybe sometimes I feel like, oh, guitars could have been like louder in the end, but the other guys didn't ask for it. So
Yeah, and you always try to like find like the perfect balance, like okay, this needs to be turned up by like a hair or stuff, or do you try to like find it like within like the context of the song?
but I'm just trying to make it as a, like, once again, like I turn knobs, and when I think it sounds pretty good, I'm like, okay, that's it. you know?
Yeah. And kind of like talking more about like the death metal genre, because death metal for me, death metal, there's always like those different waves. There's the first wave with, of course, like Zest and Death, which pretty much people consider them as like the first death metal bands, and then there's the obvious like death metal bands with the second wave, like Cannibal Corpse, Dying Fetus, and all that stuff. And even like newer bands that taking like that old school approach, like saying with Suga Ball, Frozen Soul, and 200 Stab Wounds. So how do you feel about like how the death metal genre has evolved over the years, and how do you see like the band's contribution to like the genre's progression, and where do you see it like going into the future?
My music in general is it's always been cycles, I believe. And if I look at, for example, like 200 Stab Wound, just for example, they really have this really old school vibe, and I like it. It's like less and less produced, or I mean, less and less triggered and more organic, and they leave more mistakes like it used to be in back in the days. And I find it's cool. It's a making for a resurgence of the past. But I mean, if it's cyclic, if it's a cycle, maybe you'll have in the future we'll see like clean production coming back again. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. And then talking about like the Montreal death metal scene, because I feel like the death metal scene, like from you guys, like Cataclysm, Beyond Creation, Shin the Agonist, Neuraxis, Despised Icon, so many so forth. There's like so many great bands within like that death metal style, but they also sound very different from each other. So was there like the scene in Montreal, or was it the goal for like Cryptopsy, like get outside of Montreal and Quebec and play in front of like different crowds and different audiences and stuff?
Montreal's always special. I don't know what's up with that city, but it's just it's just very special for metal. Every show we make is just most of the time the best, and I think it's that for a lot of bands too. When they just go to Montreal, people just I don't know. I guess they are very fanatic of metal in that city.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, we always get influenced with each other. And like, for example, I'm a big Gomorrah fan myself, so I take elements of Gorguts and I sometimes put it a bit into Cryptopsy, and it's probably what we always do because every bands are so good. Like Iron Dissonance is amazing. I like I just love to take like every element of those bands and just put into ours, and maybe that makes us sound a bit different because we influence each other, I guess.
Yeah. And so kind of like in the end to sort of wrap things up, what's next for Cryptopsy? I know you've been on this awesome tour right now at Death Toll, and I know you got the tour with our boys in Carnifex coming up. Is just anything else with the as Gomorrah Burns cycle that you would like to promote in terms of like tours and stuff? And when can we expect some more new music from Cryptopsy, if you're allowed to say?
Oh, as I said before, we are currently writing the new album on the road, which is not easy, but we make it happen. And yeah, you probably have more tours coming up, but right now there's nothing confirmed. I think we're talking about another Asian tour soon, but it's not set in stone yet. But yes, we're trying to release the next album. I don't want to say as soon as possible, but almost as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
try not
As
to
soon as
take
we
12
think it's
years.
no, no, we don't want that. Like it's gonna be like within 2 years max for sure.
Awesome. So thank you, Christian, for this conversation. Is just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Gotta support metal, my friends. It's very important. It's good for everyone.
Awesome. So everybody, Christian Donaldson from Cryptopsy. We'll see you next time.